Welcome back to Open Line. We are talking about gun laws in Tennessee. We have John Harris with us, President of Tennessee Firearms Association. We talked about background checks in the first segment and also the new law that allows guns to be carried on campuses by professors and other full-time employees. So let's go to the phones. You can call in if you want to. There's the number. Let's go to Lee. Hello, Lee.
Yes.
Lee, go right ahead.
I'm just amused by the idiocy of these right-wingers who believe that more guns equals more safety. I mean, either you don't have command of basic mathematics, because all you have to do is compare the number of people killed in the United States by guns with the number of people killed in Canada or the UK or other European countries. And it's obvious to anybody except a fool that more guns equals less safety, not more safety.
All right, Lee, thank you for that. What do you think of that?
Well, Lee's got an opinion, and he's entitled to it. That's theoretically what the First Amendment's about. But there was a gentleman by the name of John Lott who started off. He was a college-level economist, I believe is what John was, and he sort of had the theory that more guns are dangerous for society. So he went out as an economist and started doing the studies, looking at the data from the FBI and different, and came to the opposite conclusion when he actually looked at the data. Now, I don't know what Lee's looking at, but I know that the people who've actually looked at the data generally find that as you increase the number of legally armed citizens in a community, the rate of violent crime actually goes down, not up.
But if you compare America, the United States, and the violence in this country to the violence you see in countries where there are not as many guns, you could pick any, Britain, Canada, aren't we much higher? I mean, would you argue that fact?
Well, you look at, I mean, the problem is you can handpick a few other countries, but if you do the same contrast with Sweden and Israel, their incidences of firearms possession by the civilian is a lot higher than ours. You know, you see the pictures of Israeli school teachers walking around with fully automatic machine guns on, and so it's how you pick the data and look at it. And I know in Lott's studies he's accounted for those differentials, but you know, England has banned civilian ownership of guns, Canada has to some extent, Japan did, and what they typically see is in those communities, if you isolate them and look at their crime data, their rates of a violent crime go up. So it may not be a shooting, but it may be a knifing or some other type of assault. And what you've done is you've taken the people that aren't likely to commit the crimes in the first place and defeated their ability to defend themselves frequently.
You heard the frustration or maybe anger in Lee's voice. And I think he said the absurdity or maybe something else of the notion that more guns equals more safety. And I've heard that same frustration from people on the other side who say you just don't get it. More guns equals more safety. You have people that so passionately disagree.
Yes, they do.
And I think, you know, they're well-meaning. I mean, I think they both fully believe it. They both really can't understand how the other side sees what they see. And so how do we ever come to any sort of, I don't know about resolution or agreement? What happens with this debate?
Well, you know, the debate, it may not be one in which there is a resolution that's easily attained. You have in this country 30 states that have no permitting requirements but allow their citizens to openly carry firearms, no permit, no training, no background check. The data rate in those states isn't any worse than it is in Tennessee, and we've got expensive fees, background checks, and training requirements. We have a lot of additional hurdles.
You talk about data, but couldn't the other side bring out data that would indicate something different? I mean, I think data is so malleable. I mean, people are like, well, I'm going to use this data to prove this point.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think if you isolated and said Tennessee versus Kentucky, that makes it more susceptible to misinterpretation. When you got 30 out of 50 states doing it, I think it neutralizes the flyers, so to speak. You know, you get more into a norm.
And that is the next step, right? We're talking about constitutional carry.
Well, there's two versions of it. There's constitutional carry, which is broader than permitless open carry. Constitutional carry allows someone to carry openly or concealed. Permitless open carry is a situation where the theory is you're less of a risk if I can see that you're armed as opposed to the fact that you're hiding it, apparently. Tennessee used to, until about the 1970s, had permitless open carry. Our rule here in this state was as long as you carried a military-style handgun openly in your hand, you didn't have to have a permit.
Okay.
Now, not a lot of people did it.
No. And it sounds a little bit like something you'd see in a Western. I mean, there would be people with these guns strapped to the...
You couldn't holster it. You had to literally
you had to carry it in your hand.
Carry it in the hand.
I don't know how that works. But that's going to be the next battle. In fact, it's been a battle.
Oh, yeah.
Constitutional carry. This is where you are allowed to carry a gun without getting a permit, without going through the training
Right.
that you are now required to go through. You've pushed very hard for this. It hasn't passed. Is that right?
Well, it has not, but we feel very comfortable that had those bills been put on the House and Senate floors, they would have passed with substantial majorities.
Had it gotten to the floor.
Right. The reason they have not gotten to the floor is because the leadership is manipulating the committee system. So, for example, our House member on the permitless open carry bill, Micah Van Huss, in 2015 had the bill. He had 26 sponsors on it. There's only 99 House members, so he had more than a quarter of the House members sponsoring the bill. It went to a subcommittee that had 6 people sitting on it, and it died on a 2-2 vote. It just, it didn't have a 3 to whatever would have
Right, it didn't have the
forward.
majority, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So it just stalled in the committee, but we're certain, counting heads, if the bills were to get to the floor, and they come very close, potentially this year, that they're going to pass the year we get them on the floor.
People who think, I think people who believe we need more gun control would say the gun lobby is so powerful in Tennessee. The gun lobby gets what it wants. And then what is your opinion? Now you're on the other side of that. How powerful do you think the gun lobby is in Tennessee?
We're persistent, and here's where we see the dynamic change. The gun lobby, I mean, we got 500,000 people with permits in this state. We've got a lot more than that own guns. But when we ran, for example, the safe commute laws, our biggest opposition was Federal Express, Volkswagen, the Chamber of Commerce. They were big industry. And the big difference was, particularly since 2011, our opposition is not coming from some other grassroots group. It's coming from big business that puts a lot of money into campaigns, but they have very few voters. And so how we have to change things with the gun lobby is if you look at the PAC reports, the gun lobby doesn't put a lot of money into the campaigns compared to everybody else. The gun lobby does it by getting voters to reject incumbents that keep voting against us.
Right.
And that's why it takes us a while to change the composition of the General Assembly, but we'll get there.
Okay, let's go to Will. Hello, Will.
Hi.
Hi, go right ahead.
You were asking, how do you get past the gridlock between two strongly held opinions? Here's how it's done. You fund the Congress to do research on gun ownership and what it means to bring a gun into your home. That kind of funding was cut off about 15 years ago when the NRA decided that knowing the facts about gun ownership and gun violence would skew public opinion. According to the last CDC report, which is over 15 years old now, you're 42 times more likely to have a gun that you bring into your home used against a family member than an intruder.
All right, thank you. You have one more? Yeah, go ahead.
No, beyond that, research is how you change opinions. But beyond that, as far as this goes, as far as your setup goes, where is the other side? There should be someone else besides this gun lobbyist on your show.
Right. Now, we've had the state representative on a different show. I agree. We should have both sides, and I try to ask questions along those lines. And I promise we have had the state representative on. He's been on by himself.
Have them on together.
Right, right. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate and I understand where you're coming from. Now, his question, which is one that we get, about research.
Right.
federal government, Congress has cut off research to the CDC, and that is what we don't know some of these facts. And he throws out one: you're more likely to be killed by a gun you bring into your home.
Well, but there's built into that the presumption that Congress is the right person to be doing the studies in the first place. There are organizations out there, including nonprofits, that will not take money from the NRA or the gun lobby. There are academics out there that work in the university systems that they've done these studies. You know, and so there's no shortage of studies on the data about whether what he said is accurate or not, or even if it's still accurate, because you've got variables in terms of how the composition was put together. But the fact is, the studies are out there. There's a lot of them. There's no shortage of people studying the impact of guns on society. And what you run into is studies that say they're positive, other studies that come from maybe special interest groups that say they're negative. And then you have people who fundamentally, I think from an emotional perspective, cling to one study or the other. Well, you're not going to reconcile those two necessarily. That's just the matter of public opinion.
Do you disagree with that then, that if you bring a gun into your home, it's more likely to be used against a family member than an intruder? Do you think that's an incorrect statement?
Off the cuff, I don't know what study he's looking at. I don't see that, and I've been doing this for 21 years as a volunteer. I've not seen that type of data in this state. If that existed, I'm sure in a span of 20 years, somebody would have thrown that out in these legislative hearings.
But we have seen a lot of, accidental shootings.
Those things happen.
And we seem to see a lot of those. And I don't know if we see more of those than, an intruder being shot in the home, but it seems like just watching the news, you do see more of those.
You do see them. And the question becomes, are they being selected for news purposes because they have more of an emotional attachment than, for example, we run into stories a lot about officers involved in accidental shootings, at home holstering their gun, or their kid picked it up. A lot of the stories that we hear about don't make it to the news. And it's because y'all got a lot of stuff to report on and maybe 15 minutes to do it,
Right. So it would be good to have a good, solid, reliable study on that. But again, the two sides are so far apart, it's hard to find that.
Right.
We have to take a break. If you're on the line, hold on. If you want to call, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. We'll take a break. Be back right after this.